Robbie. We're going to bring in our two guests. We have Mr. Egberto Willies with Politics Done Right, who is a regular on this broadcast. Hey, Egberto, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. How are both of you doing? Hi, Tamara. Hi, Robbie. Nice to be here.
Hey. Good morning. Good morning. We're going to bring in Mr. Greg Williams to have a conversation with us. Good morning, Greg. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, Claire. How are you?
Great. How are you? Welcome.
Busy Friday.
Yes, it is. So I won't keep you gentlemen very long, but I wanted to invite you both to the broadcast. I have to tell a quick story about how I met Greg. Greg was actually a candidate for the state senate along the way as I was a candidate, and we met. And we are on different sides of the aisle, but Greg and I had a lot in common, and I think we had a lot of mutual respect for each other. So I wanted to have him come on this morning and talk with Egberto and share with me and Robbie and our listening audience, and of course our other co-host David, share with us what you can about the government shutdown and the wall.
Excellent. How do you want to start this, Tamara?
Whoever wants to go first. I just want to eat my popcorn and listen.
Well, if we did alphabetical order, we got Williams and Willies, so that's pretty close.
I think you won, so go for it. Go for it, Greg.
Well, nobody wins in these government shutdowns. We've found that to be true every time there's a shutdown. The workers always get back pay. It ends up costing federal government even more money than they would normally make in wages. It causes disruptions in their lives. So it's irresponsible for Congress to allow this to happen. And I've said that every time there's been a shutdown, they cannot get their budget process right. They are held hostage by a few zealots in either party that will not allow it. And it's very frustrating because it can have a negative economic impact. And I'm in the banking industry, and there are several services that are shut down right now, specifically with the Federal Housing Authority, the FHA, as well as the IRS is not sending back 4506 transcript requests because they're shut down. So there's a huge broad impact or a very broad impact right now because of this shutdown. I'm not a fan of it. I think they need to compromise. If the Democrats do not want to use the term wall, then let's call it an enhanced southern border and give the funding to it. 80% of Americans agree that we need to have secure borders. Most people don't think we need a 40-foot concrete wall, though. So there's got to be a compromise. It's only a few $1 billion, and I hate saying only a few billion, but in the case of a federal government with a $4 trillion annual budget, it's a drop in the bucket, and they've got to figure out a way to have a compromise reached.
Okay, let me say something, Greg. First of all, everything that you said is correct. Unfortunately, however, you sounded like a position we would normally call a Democratic position in what you're asking for. I think the problem right now is not the Congress, but Donald Trump. And what Donald Trump is really doing is he's held his own party hostage. We have to remember that the Republicans already passed bills that they supported that just needed his signature that would have kept the government open. But President Trump is a very, very strong leader for his party, and nobody wants to take the risk of bucking him. That becomes an imperial state, and in becoming an imperial state, it freezes a democracy. And we as a democracy can't move forward as long as he has the power that he has over the current party. Unfortunately, Donald Trump, while he has the power over the party, he doesn't have the moral standards or the intellect to do that, because as we know, there are a lot of issues with building a wall. If they were to concede building a wall, plants and insects and animals know no difference between borders. People who live on the border, I am here in Texas. If you go to McAllen, Brownsville, El Paso, or all of these other cities, what you find is, number one, they are the safest cities around to lie to Americans and tell them that there are murderers and drugs coming over the border, when we know that the drugs that are hampering Americans come from China through the airports, when we know that the issues with regards to illegal immigration, or what I like to call undocumented immigration, is really not at the borders, but through the air and through the other ports of entries. And the most and largest part that we have with immigration is between Canada and the United States. A much longer border. Nobody talks about it. They speak about it just because of the nature of the people coming from the south as opposed to the people coming in from the north.
The biggest problem with illegal immigration is people overstaying their visas. That's
Absolutely.
a well-known fact. So,
yes.
But there are certainly thousands upon thousands of apprehensions at the border. We've had caravans coming here. We have what I consider, I don't know if it's an emergency, but we do have a crisis when we have tens of thousands of people making this dangerous migration from Central America and then creating a backlog in people that have applied for immigration the legal way. My wife is from Ecuador, and we applied and got her citizenship through the legal mechanism. She had to work at Publix for a year to establish her residency here, and now she's assistant branch manager at a bank. But we have gone through the machinations of the legal process. So
Absolutely.
I know
and
difficulty, but people like me
respect.
Take umbrage to people trying to cut the line, and I'm not doing it in a racist or negative manner or of fear mongering. I'm doing that out of fairness.
I don't. First of all, when I'm speaking to Republicans, I do not. Whether race is involved or not, I usually stay away from that subject on a personal basis because it gets us nowhere. So let me put it this way. You're correct. Your wife is from Ecuador, and she came over here and she did it the right way. I'm from Panama. I came over here the right way and I did it. Now here's my feeling, however. There's a rule between America and Cuba. Anybody who swam that channel and touched American soil became a legal resident of the United States. Okay. Yep. They did that. Now, when not Benjamin Franklin, but when the settlers came to America, and I know many of you don't like to go this far, they came here, they touched land, they stayed here because they had the impetus to get here, they stayed here. When they came here, they conquered. The people that are coming from the south and the north, they're coming out not to conquer, but they're coming out of getting a job. That is their goal. Now, I am more progressive than most people. What I really believe in is that if you are able to come to this country and land on this land, that you are ingenious enough to do it, then stay. Let's protect our borders. Let's secure our borders. But if somebody is smart enough to get over here and they're living a legal life, they're doing their jobs, let's find a way to legalize those people. I know it sounds a bit too liberal for you. I know that. But I'm saying we can find a compromise somewhere in there, because a country that was formed on taking somebody's land should not be so bold into treating people also trying to get here as some sort of illegals, but just people looking for the same opportunity the original settlers were trying to look for when they got here.
I'm with Egberto on this. I was born in the States, and my mother came here as a student. And my father's side is from Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is a territory. So they have a very unusual relationship with the United States, which I'm born here, I'm American. And I say that proudly and with great affection with all of the resources that I've been given as a woman in this country. And ironically, some of my family is actually from Ecuador as well, as your wife is, Mr. Williams. I just, from my perspective, I agree with Mr. Willies that we're on stolen land, and respectfully, when I drive around Atlanta and I'm in real estate, every city contract, everything that's being built in this city is being built by Latinos. And it's very obvious that they are not legal. I mean, they are truly not. And back to kind of what David was speaking about earlier, the people hiring people, for that matter, if on both sides, both of your perspectives, are complicit then. And these are city and county contracts. These are developers. These are construction. And I've seen whole entire crews of Latinos building city streets. See, and before it was Latinos who are coming in, and I used to work for the airline, so I'm familiar with the process of them coming in on airplanes from Guatemala, et cetera. 150 people with, some people don't even speak English, and you can tell who's bringing them in to do our construction and our farming. And before it was Latinos, it was Black people. literally working for free with slave labor. That's how we built things. So in my opinion, what I'd like to see is a better system altogether, not where people are doing it the right way and suffering, and then people are doing it the quote unquote wrong way and being used and pitted against each other, but truly a new system, a radical, creative system, something to, again, tie it all together. Alexandria Cortez, we talked about her last time. She said if you shut down the government, Congress shouldn't take their salaries. And she's right. I agree with that woman. That is a creative, radical solution. How long can you live without your congressional salary, sir? And, I think you both have a point, but I'd like to see something totally new and revamped.
Well, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel necessarily with something radical. I do agree with AOC on that. I mean, yeah, the congressional members are making $174,000 a year, which puts them in the top 10% of income earners. And it would be nice for them to go without pay and have it not refundable to them. That might give them a little bit more of an impetus to get things done. I would love to see a broader guest worker program. You're right. We're having a lot of our farms that, frankly, it's a lot of Latino labor, and a lot of, especially in California and even in Georgia, some farms have a lot of fruit and vegetables laying on the vines because they've run out of labor. Now, that's also the sign of a hot economy. I have a lot of contacts in the Hispanic community, and they are busier than you can imagine. And they are not working at slave labor wages or anything like that. They're making good money. And frankly, when they're in this country, it's not my job to determine their legal status. So if somebody's a good worker, then they'll get a job on a project that I'm working on. The E-Verify system is another thing that's down right now due to the government shutdown, and that's one of the ways, when you referenced earlier about seeing Latinos on all these construction projects, that's one of the ways that they're supposed to verify the status. So going back to the shutdown, that's just another problem endemic with our government not doing its job.
Greg, I'd like to interrupt a while because you made a very important point in your statement. And it shows you how abstraction has led to the hypocrisy of our system. You pointed out something that is so true. You said you hire people, and it is not your job to really verify folks' citizenship. So what we have is a quasi-economy here. Where undocumented workers are allowed to come in to service people who really don't have to care about their level, their documentation or not. And you can be successful in having a train of people coming in. We have another group of private companies who kick them out. They make some money from kicking them out, and another flock comes in, and you make some money from the efficient work and efficient labor that you make from them, and another private company kicks them out. Another private company holds them. What we have is an industrial complex that uses the undocumented workers as the raw material. And it is done in a what I call an antiseptic manner, so that it looks like it's moral. But what we have is a very immoral system. And if you take a look at it at the core, it is by design. Do you really think Trump wants to keep these people out? If he wants to keep these people out, we are a technological company. An E-Verify system is almost perfect. We could make sure there is zero employment for undocumented workers, in which case, if you believe in the capitalist system of supply and demand, then that would kill the demand. I mean, that will kill the demand. And given that the demand is killed, there will be no supply. So, I mean, this is a very simple manner made complicated just so that a group of small, private, wealthy plutocrats can actually make money. And that is what we've been trying to teach Americans all along. Your party, and I don't want to, and I'm not talking about you as an individual, because we are all a part of a system. And because you are of one system and I have another system, most of us don't understand the analysis that goes in within the system. We're just protagonists within the system. But it's an evil system that uses the undocumented worker as raw material, just like we have an evil system that uses 80% of Americans as nothing more than peons at the 20% control.
Yeah, I think this does need to be radical. It does need to be reformed. Honestly, Ocasio's statement on not paying salaries for our senators and congressmen during shutdown is revolutionary. That is not minor at all. And to be blunt about it, we need the old systems are no longer functioning. They are shadows of prior systems that were damaging for people.
Robbie, can I interrupt you 1 second? Because you said an important point right there. The old systems, I think the reality is that the old systems are working as intended, right? And that is to keep a few empowered. And, the few empowered is not, and the reason I don't like to hit the racial thing is because I think the racial thing is, it is something that distracts us, right? Because most people that are affected by this system aren't nosotros los colores. It's not the colored folk. It's not the black folk. It's not the people of color that are most affected. It is my brothers and sisters in Appalachia. It is my brothers and sisters in the mountains. It is our brothers and sisters all over that are actually white that are screwed. And that's the reason I'm trying to, and I know that has been Tamara's movement in her district as well, is we get everybody together and realize that the real demon is not us all, the different folks that have all these ideologies. The real demon is the system proper.
The land of opportunity a little bit short, because in my opinion and my viewpoints, we do have upward mobility still in this country. My wife is a perfect example of that. Robbie, you'll know this, and Egberto as well. People with degrees in countries, Ecuador, Panama, their degrees may be in business, management, computer science. Those degrees don't mean anything here. You'll have doctors and lawyers from Africa and India working as cashiers at Publix. You guys have seen that, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
My wife had to totally reinvent herself here. And like I said, she had a hairnet in her hair, serving yuppies in Virginia Highlands subs for about a year and a month, until she was able to demonstrate customer service experience and that she could run a cash box. Then she got a job as an assistant teller at BB&T, and then she's just moved up through the ranks to where she's an assistant operations manager. Her salary has gone up 7-fold, benefits, and she is from a very wealthy country, family in Ecuador. So she was not coming here and like leaving some hovel. She was leaving, I'd call her an Ecuadorian princess, but a very well-to-do, well-established family to come here and make her stake in this land because she loved the country and the opportunity so much. I just use her as an example because I've lived with her for 10 years. So I kind of know her.
I know where you're coming from. I do. And this is with great respect and admiration for your wife and for you. I watch this a lot because I want to be careful on how I say this because I want to make sure you understand that I respect where you're coming from and your wife and what she's
I have a thick skin. You can offend me all you want.
No. I don't want to actually. But I think the disconnect is that people like your wife, and my mother to a degree, even though my mom and dad hadn't graduated high school, come here with certain backgrounds. You mentioned your wife, highly educated. Clearly, her family has a work ethic. Clearly, she knows structure, organization. Probably came from a pretty stable family and background. And unfortunately, in the United States, what we have is subcultures, and this is where I'm going to disagree with you too, Egberto. I think there is a racial component here. We have subcultures who are Black, who have come out of complete instability, who have not been educated, purposely, who have lived in divested communities that have been ravaged by one thing after another. And their generational line brings in an entirely different product. And then when your wife comes in and competes with that, your wife is of course she's going to soar, because look at the level that she's competing in. And that does bring up race. And I agree with you, Egberto, that we are all getting screwed to a degree, but there are different levels of getting screwed.
I really think
if I may answer that.
Interject here. Hello. Interject something at this point, if you don't mind.
David, yeah, I don't mind, but before you come in, David, I do need to, I just need to answer Robbie one thing, that to let her know that there isn't a disagreement that we have. I agree with you. The reason I said I don't bring race in is because there are I can find commonality in the way Black folk and Appalachians are treated, so that we can create a commonality among them, and then we fight against supremacy.
Thing that I would suggest about how to square the circle of this thing about race and class, about exploitation and oppression, which are two really distinct, categories. And to understand that somebody can be both racially privileged and economically exploited,
right,
which is the situation that most European American working people find themselves in. And you can also be a person of a working person of color who is both exploited and, in terms of political and racially oppressed.
Right.
So there is an inequality there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when we're talking about that within the working class, there is an inequality, but there is also a commonality. That is the common, exploitation and the concentration of wealth that the separate and unequal status makes us powerless to be able to respond to. All right. Now, when you have 12 million people living in this country who are undocumented, and you ratchet up the pressure on them, that is the political pressure on them, what you do is you send them, as they say, into the shadows, and you make it impossible for them to organize, to fight for their rights, both their rights as human beings and their rights as workers. Okay, and to some extent, the labor movement in this country, the unions, have gotten that, and they used to be opposed to undocumented workers. Now they're beginning to organize them in the last 5 or 10 years, because they realize how damaging it is to working class solidarity to have a bunch of people who are constantly looking over their shoulders at La Migra, or ICE. So Greg is absolutely right. There are people who come to this country by the tens of thousands who manage to find a way to rise in their status, but and to make a good life for themselves here. The fact of the matter is that those people, by their tens of thousands, are creating jobs for other people as well, whether they're legal or undocumented. They are doing that. But there are millions of people in this country, like an order of magnitude greater, who are living in a status which renders them unable to protect themselves and their children and protect their rights.
David, there's something also that I think Americans, born Americans, that need to understand about people who make it here. People who make it here as well are the exception. I mean, the fact that they've made it here, the fact that they've picked up and moved on here shows that they, Greg, you earlier spoke about mobility. These are people that had mobility, whether it's mobility of character, mobility of income, with the ability to come. They did something to get out of a situation. That type of mentality already prints success on you, because that means that you're a person who are going to leave a situation. There are some people who just live within a situation as if they don't have options. These people that come to this country, illegal or otherwise, they've shown one thing, that they have the character and the wherewithal to actually get here. And that's one of the reasons, if you mentioned what I mentioned earlier, is we should reward that. We should reward that. Wow, just like the pilgrims came here, they had the wherewithal to come here and stay. These other people are, yes, protect our borders, but if somebody's ingenious around to get around, hey, that person may just be ingenious to develop something as well.
Very tight broadcast this morning, and I know Greg has to go. Greg, I wanted to definitely invite you back to these kind of conversations. They are rich. We need to have them across the aisle. Like we get sometimes caught up in talking to those that think like us. That I really appreciate your perspective and your insight.
I'd love to get Egberto, David, and Tamara, and Ms. Caban on my podcast. I'm on Tuesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. I've been running a bipartisan missive the past couple of years, and we've had a lot of agreement, some major policy disagreements, but the good thing is we have the same end goal, and that is improving the lives of people. I think we should look through the private sector to do that, and my liberal friends tend to think we should use the government to do it, but
Right.
that's we have a good debate. So, Egberto, pleasure meeting you today, as well to you, Ms. Caban, Tamara, and also David. Thank you guys this morning.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Greg,
We look forward to having you back.
I want to just tell Greg, one of the things I love is as having people on the other side who are willing to have a conversation and not shout and match you. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
All right,
Greg.
you get a great weekend, okay? And
Thank
we'll
you.
see
We
you
look
next
forward to having you back. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Egberto, I want to thank you for always being giving us a national perspective. Egberto is with Politics Done Right. If you have not checked out his broadcast, please do. He is out of Texas, but he is on fire all the time. So thank you, Egberto, for joining us this week on this broadcast. We look forward to having you back next week.
We'll be there.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. You too, Tamara.